the issue with the WNBA, and I'm going to repeat a mantra. It is the most unlikable league and culture in all of sports by far. And I'm talking from the players to some of the ownership, to all the media members, to the podcasters, to those who defend it. It's the most unlikable league in the whole wide world. And this is just another piece of evidence to support that statement.
Before she even set foot on a professional floor, the WNBA was supposed to have found its savior, a once-in-a-generation talent and household celebrity. A player so captivating that she immediately smashed television records and packed venues. However, the league has taken an unimaginable action rather than honoring her. Its greatest asset has become its biggest drawback. The reality is harsh. Beneath the cheerful press conferences and highlight reels is a league that is so divided and preoccupied with its own politics that it is currently being referred to as the most unlikable culture in all of sports. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 85% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great. Thank you so much for your support. Now, back to the video. Furthermore, neither detractors nor competing organizations provide evidence to support such assertion. It stems from how they've handled the one individual who could have ensured their future. It wasn't an isolated incident for Caitlin Clark to turn down the multimillion-dollar, life-altering offer. It wasn't the error that some sports journalists hastily labeled. Furthermore, it had nothing to do with her allegiance to a league that profits from her reputation while paying her pitiful wages. It was much more deliberate. A trap. The WNBA entered the trap with wide eyes due to its flawless design. They are now unable to locate a route out. We're revealing the news that the league doesn't want you to know today. A tale of sabotage, covert plans, and a celebrity who outwitted a whole company. Because Caitlin Clark's recent actions have the potential to bring down the entire system in addition to making the WNBA answerable for its wrongdoing. You must first comprehend the bait in order to appreciate the genius of Caitlin Clark's approach. And it was perfect. Unrivaled was a brand new league. WNBA players Nfisa Keir and Brianna Stewart co-founded the company. They didn't arrive empty-handed when they knocked on Clark's door. They gladly presented an offer akin to that of Lionel Messi. An empire, not only a contract. Just the figures were astounding. For just 8 or 10 weeks of basketball, almost $1 million. That is more than 13 times Clark's ridiculous $76,535 official rookie salary in the WNBA. To put that in context, she brings in millions of dollars for the league through sponsorship, record-breaking TV ratings, and sellout crowds. She does, however, earn less than a mid-level accountant. That is offensive in addition to being unfair. However, the proposition went beyond cash. The payment was accompanied by something even more valuable. Ownership, equity, and a portion of the league as a whole. Clark was not being viewed as a replaceable player for the first time. The WNBA had never dared to give her the keys to power. One of the creators of Unrivaled even acknowledged what everyone else was thinking. Caitlin Clark was being taken advantage of. They publicly stated that, given the enormous amount of money she is making, she ought to be among the highest-paid players in the world. It wasn't conjecture. It was an admission. Evidence that the WNBA was content to use Clark as a marketing tool without giving her the compensation she was due. The presumption was clear when this agreement came up. She would accept it. She would, of course. Why wouldn't she? Greater wealth, respect, and liberty. It was the best way out of a league that gave her pocket change and handled her like an ATM.
Is another reason why Caitlin Clark needs to flee the WNBA. It's a political organization. They're not serious about business. That they don't care about traditional sports fans. It's a little cult that puts out little political statements and everybody wears vote t-shirts. They don't care about making money. They don't care really about building up this league and making it profitable. They're a charity. She needs to flee the WNBA and start her own league.
But is another justification for Caitlin Clark's need to leave the WNBA. It's a political group. They don't care about traditional sports fans and are not serious about business. It's a small cult that makes small political claims. Vote t-shirts are worn by everyone. Making money is not important to them. Building this league and making it profitable are not really important to them. They are a non-profit organization. She must leave the WNBA and launch her own league. Her next move was devastating, though, because she chose to walk away rather than take the bait. The sports world froze when Caitlin Clark declined the offer. This was unimaginable, not just surprising. Who would turn down $1 million salary and a league-wide stake? Who opposes ownership, financial independence, and the opportunity to leave a system that obviously dislikes them? The media rushed to provide an explanation. She reportedly desired more sleep. Some said she should concentrate on her first season. Some claimed she didn't require the additional funds, citing her endorsement deals. However, the meaning was lost in all of those explanations. Fatigue was not the reason for Clark's refusal. It had nothing to do with endorsements or WNBA allegiance. It has to do with delivering a message. Clark demonstrated that she wasn't chasing paychecks by turning down what appeared to be the ideal chance. Her goal was to gain power. Convenience was not the reason for this choice. A declaration of war was made. Clark was playing a whole other game while the WNBA was preoccupied with politics. It was much more than just basketball. She did more than simply turn down Unrivaled's offer. She turned that rejection into a weapon. She declined millions to draw attention to something much more significant. She was imprisoned within a hostile, malfunctioning system. Because of this, her choice served as a warning indication that her story was no longer solely about athletics. It has nothing to do with salary, wins, or defeats. It was about something that people outside of the basketball community were interested in. Something that might rock the league as a whole. That signal, what was it? It was the sound of the federal government intervening. The story leapt from the sports pages into the national attention as soon as Caitlin Clark turned down that offer, since it was no longer just about a celebrity passing on money. It concerned the mounting proof that she was being singled out, taken advantage of, and silenced within the same organization that relied on her. At that point, the federal government became engaged. Sean Mullen, a former White House employee, openly demanded that the WNBA be the subject of a federal probe. He asserted that Clark was the victim of a workplace that was textbook hostile. It was a systematic campaign of abuse that the league condoned, if not promoted, rather than merely difficult play or rookie hazing. The evidence is overwhelming. She has already received 6 flagrant fouls in her first season, which is more than some veterans receive in their whole careers. Kennedy Carter shoved her to the ground, Marina Maberry took her down hard, and she was caught off guard by intentional body checks. 10 games were lost. 10 from injuries that, had the league truly protected its brightest star, would never have occurred. Her opponents are no longer able to dispute it. Sophie Cunningham, a guard for the Phoenix Mercury, made it clear. There is no protection for the league's best player. Consider that. It's not a fan, it's not a talking head, and it's not a rival who has publicly acknowledged that the league is purposefully allowing its best player to be beaten. Still, there was silence at the summit. No significant fines, no actual bans, and no public defense of Clark. The player accountable for their record ratings is literally left to bear the consequences of every foul, shove, and injury that occurs in the WNBA. Because it's no longer conjecture, the allegations of a hostile workplace struck so hard. The bruises are genuine. The wounds are genuine. Furthermore, the league's inaction goes beyond simple incompetence. It appears to be collusion. Even while the physical targeting was terrible, there were other indications that something more serious was happening. Because the politics continued beyond the court, they extended all the way to the Olympic arena. The Olympic rejection dispelled any doubt that might have been aroused by the hits on the court. Because performance had nothing to do with what transpired there. It had to do with politics. The truth was exposed through leaked information from seasoned journalist Christine Brennan's next book. It was inevitable that Caitlin Clark would not make the Olympic squad. Not because she lacked sufficient talent. Because the choice had been skewed from the beginning, her influence and statistics shouted louder than anything else. As a farewell present to Diana Taurasi, a game icon who was well past her prime, her roster place was given up. Putting together the greatest team to represent the U.S. was not the goal. It was about keeping the status quo intact, rewarding loyalty, and keeping the one player whose fame threatened to overtake them all. Furthermore, the logic was worse than the result. Officials reportedly didn't give Clark enough playing time because they were afraid of the criticism if he was featured. Consider that. They decided to keep her completely off the team rather than take the chance of her fame overshadowing veterans. She wasn't rejected because she wasn't competent. Because she was too talented, too well-liked, and too indisputable, they ignored her. It was an obvious message. It has nothing to do with competition. It has to do with control. When Christy Sides, Clark's Indiana Fever coach, broke the news to him, Clark's reaction was neither loss nor rage. "It was a warning," she remarked plainly. A monster was awakened by them. There was more to that line than defiance. It was a prophecy. Because the league's attempt to dehumanize her merely served to highlight how brittle their authority actually was. It was impossible to put that monster back to sleep once it woke up. What transpired next demonstrated how crucial Clark is to the WNBA and how rapidly the system could fall apart without her. The WNBA has used the same justification to dismiss criticism for years. "We're expanding. Please give us some time." However, that justification was destroyed when Caitlin Clark joined the league. Because no amount of spin could change the story the numbers conveyed. The WNBA reached previously unheard of heights with Clark on the court. 1.81 million people watched her games on average. Arena after arena was sold out. To meet the demand, teams were forced to relocate to larger stadiums. Sales of merchandise surged. The WNBA was not limited to the sports page for the first time in decades. National headlines were dominated by it. However, everything fell apart as soon as she moved away. Clark missed 10 games due to injuries. Ratings plummeted by an astounding 55%. The average number of viewers dropped to just 847,000. It's not a dip. It's a free fall. Networks, sponsors, and marketers are terrified of that kind of collapse. And this is the harsh reality. The WNBA as a whole is to blame for this league's demise. Because of Caitlin Clark, it is surviving. An entire organization is supported by a single player. The WNBA is aware of this. The networks are aware of this. Even her competitors are aware of it. Nevertheless, they have treated her like an annoyance, a cash machine they can milk without ever giving her the respect, protection, or influence she deserves, rather than safeguarding her and constructing the league around the one star capable of carrying it into the future. The figures don't lie, thus it's self-destructive in addition to being short-sighted. The WNBA is not only weaker but irrelevant without Caitlin Clark. Because of this, her choice to decline the $1 million getaway wasn't at all stupid. It was calculated. Because she demonstrated that her battle isn't about pursuing wealth at that very moment. It's about something much more significant. Instead of giving up authority, she made it her own. And the most disastrous action to date was made possible by that rejection. It seems crazy at first glance. Caitlin Clark turned down $1 million, stock in a brand new league, and independence from the politics of the WNBA. But what she earned from that act was more brilliant than what she sacrificed. Because the money was never the reason for that rejection. It has to do with leverage. Clark shifted the entire conversation overnight by declining the unparalleled offer. She wasn't your average athlete looking to make a living. She developed into the athlete who would give up millions to make a point. And that point went straight to the core of the WNBA. She refuses to participate in the flawed system. Consider how disastrous that was for the league's reputation. Critics had claimed that Clark was being taken advantage of for months. Fans have been pleading with the league to provide her better treatment for months. However, the story didn't take off until she turned down a $1 million salary. All of a sudden, the abuse was more than conjecture. It was indisputable. Because until there is a greater risk involved, no athlete would turn down such a sum of money. Her rejection caused a minor dispute to make headlines across the globe. It turned the murmurs of a harsh workplace into a scream that the league was unable to ignore. Additionally, it made cries for federal action more credible. Because the issue had to be serious if Clark, the public face of the sport, was prepared to spend a fortune in order to make a statement. She completely changed the story with a single action. She was no longer the victim. The executioner was she. Unrivaled's bait wasn't the only thing she turned down. She turned it into a weapon, demonstrating that the conflict wasn't about her money by offering her personal sacrifice. It was about dismantling a rotten system. At that point, the plan's second phase started. Because the WNBA Players Union saw their opportunity to go on strike at the same moment that Clark caused the issue. The headlines were only the beginning of Clark's decision's aftermath. The WNBA Players Union quickly took advantage of the perfect storm produced by her rejection of the unparalleled deal. Players had been complaining in private about respect, compensation, and working conditions for years. But the league always had the advantage, therefore nothing ever changed. Until Caitlin Clark blasted the doors wide, management was aware that the players lacked the power to contest the contracts, which were set in stone until 2027. The Players Union made an unexpected announcement almost immediately after her rejection became a national discussion point. They were choosing to leave the collective bargaining agreement early. In a single statement, a deal that was meant to last for a further 3 years was destroyed. Nneka Agumake, the president of the union, did not sugarcoat it. She warned that participants could no longer afford to remain still, calling it a pivotal time. To put it another way, the patience was running out. They had taken off their gloves. Here's the secret. It wasn't a coincidence. Coordination was the key. The union had the indisputable evidence they needed to demand more thanks to Clark's sacrifice. It was the ideal weapon because they could now use her narrative to argue, "Look, even the biggest star in the league, the one carrying all of us, is being exploited. If she isn't protected, if she isn't paid, if she isn't respected, what chance do the rest of us have?" In order to support their nuclear option, the union used Clark's denial as a rallying cry. They caused the league to experience an existential crisis as a result. Because the WNBA's whole financial structure is now up for discussion in the absence of a collective bargaining agreement. TV money, endorsements, salary caps, revenue sharing, all of it. The athletes had stopped asking. They made demands. The WNBA was suddenly under pressure from both sides. A players' uprising is emerging from within, while federal investigators are circling from the outside. Panic was beginning to spread at league headquarters as the walls began to close in. The WNBA was small, specialized, and shielded from true accountability for many years. However, Caitlin Clark dispelled that delusion. The league is currently caught in a crisis that it created. With allegations of a hostile workplace, possible civil rights violations, and proof that Clark has been singled out on purpose, federal investigators are circling around on one side. Subpoenas have the potential to reveal years' worth of internal correspondence, confidential discussions, and league policies that the public was never supposed to see. The cover-up might appear worse than the actual abuse if even half of the rumors are accurate. The Players Union, on the other hand, has stated that if the league doesn't give them their due share, they would shut down the entire business. They are prepared to go nuclear by tearing up the collective bargaining agreement. That isn't a strategy for negotiating. It's a war declaration. And the same player the league attempted to dehumanize is caught in the middle. Currently, he is the most powerful person in the organization's history. From being the WNBA's golden goose, Caitlin Clark is now its biggest threat. She is currently dismantling the system they created to control her. There's a tangible sense of apprehension at league headquarters. Do they eventually defend their star, own up to their mistakes, and ask for forgiveness? Or do they intensify, portraying Clark as self-centered, challenging, and even hazardous to the game she's trying to save with the help of their media allies? All of the future options are risky and unreliable. Because the public is watching, the numbers are available, and the truth is known. Caitlin Clark was viewed by the league as their savior. Rather, they might have produced their own executioner by underestimating her. The WNBA believed it could manage Caitlin Clark. They believed they could profit from her celebrity status while confining her to the same flawed system that all other players had to deal with. However, by attempting to humble her, they unleashed something for which they were unprepared. It wasn't an error for her to turn down the unbeatable $1 million offer. It was a brilliant move, a sacrifice that made quiet dissatisfaction into a player uprising, turned rumors into headlines, and compelled the federal government to confront the league's darkest secrets. The WNBA is currently at a turning point. Investigations that can reveal years of abuse and corruption on the one hand. Conversely, there was a union uprising calling for a total financial reform. The player they can't stop, the one they need the most, and the one they attempted to break is smack in the middle. Caitlin Clark didn't simply turn down the bait. She used it as a weapon. And the entire system might be destroyed by that weapon. The WNBA's ability to weather this storm is no longer the question. The question is whether it can withstand Caitlin Clark, as the monster they awakened won't go back to slumber.